My name is D. Doug Maines. You can call me Doug. My first name is Dwight, but don't tell anybody. So my name is Doug Maines, and I am the owner and operator of Runabout Coffee Company. So I'm the guy who owns a coffee catering company and provide coffee. So I'm excited to be here to talk kind of on the topic of lost, because for much of my adult life, which I'm only 31, but I've felt lost for the last 10 to 15 years. But before I kind of get in my story, I was trying to think of a time where I actually was literally lost, and I remembered a time years ago before smartphones and before GPSs, and I was a millennial back then, so I never had a paper map, and I ended up getting lost in the middle of nowhere in northern mid-Michigan for at least an hour, maybe 5 hours, I'm not sure. But let me do this. So if you've ever been literally lost, Lord be with us. Come on. Space bar. That's all right. So if you've ever been literally and physically lost, you can probably relate to the idea, the feeling that kind of comes up. When I was kind of lost in the middle of nowhere, I was overcome by anxiety. I was desperate to find a location or my destination. Negative self-talk, other people don't get lost like this, and ultimately I was de-energized and unproductive because all of my energy was being focused on the fact that I was lost. And I think that is a decent illustration for how a lot of us live our lives. We live in a very microwave culture and a results-oriented culture, and maybe you've been like me where you get a degree in something or you go to school and you think you have it figured out, and then 10 years later you're still just as lost as you were before. Thank you. So I find that we tend to be a culture of very anxious and desperate people because we're very destination focused. And so maybe that's not your story, but it's very much mine. I tried counting, emphasis on tried, and in the last 15 years I've had over 20 different jobs. I had a couple jobs in high school, then I graduated, then I got a couple jobs, I went to college, then I dropped out. I got a couple jobs, I went to college, and I dropped out. And then I got a couple jobs, and I went to college, and I dropped out. And I tell people I played the hokey pokey with school because it was like I put my right hand in, I took my right hand out, put my right hand in, I shook it all about. But every time that I left a job, every time a job left me, or every time I dropped out of school, I felt like more of a failure. I felt more anxious, more desperate, more negative, more de-energized. Because I was living in this world thinking that everyone knew where they were going, everyone knew where they were, and I was the only one who didn't. And so that feeling of loss really kind of took me into a dark season of depression and anxiety and just extreme frustration and a lack of freedom. And kind of through that season, one of the few consistent things in my life was a growing interest in the world of specialty coffee. So whether it was going to different shops or kind of growing my own personal collection of extraction equipment, or working as a barista, cafe manager, and a roaster, kind of throughout that time, this is the one thing that grew. So I didn't realize that I was in coffee until I updated my resume once to sign up for another job or go back to school, and I had a pretty impressive resume just in coffee. And I remember I typed up the resume, I stepped back, and I was like, well, I guess I'm in coffee. And I credit that to, I was so focused on this idea that I didn't have a destination, that I didn't know where I was, that I didn't even see that I had been building a pretty good foundation for a career that whole time, because my focus was elsewhere. And so it sounds like a great story, right? Doug was lost, and now he's found. But I don't really see it that way. Even now with Runabout Coffee, we're a mobile espresso bar, I kind of hold it with a looser grip. Because I've kind of come to believe, I've kind of come to believe that the opposite of being lost isn't being found, but it's being free. It's being okay with the fact that we're lost and we don't know where we are and we don't know where we're going. Because ultimately, we are all lost. I have a 97-year-old friend named Thelma. She still talks about what she's learning. And that's a hard pill to swallow for especially a lot of young people, because we want to find that destination. We want to find that place where we can kind of hit it and then we can kind of coast. And I guess if there's one thing I've learned, that destination, that point of coasting just doesn't exist. We're always in this state of aimlessness. So the question that I have and that I'd like to raise today is, how do we live a life of freedom in a season of aimlessness? The first thought that I had is give up on the idea of a destination. Like I said, my 97-year-old friend Thelma is still learning. And I think that we tend, whether we admit it or not, we tend to think that once I get that degree, or once I get that project, or find that partner, or get that career, then my life will be found. I will have reached my destiny almost. And I just love to push back against that idea of that life is just a constant state of aimlessness, that we're all lost, and that's okay, and that is very much expected. The second point is desiring a third wave way of living. So with Runabout Coffee, I consider ourselves to be a part of the third wave coffee movement. And to explain what that is, I'll touch on what the first and second wave is. So first wave coffee was kind of headed up by Folgers, and it was all about quantity over quality. So they had pounds of coffee, they burnt it to a crisp, they ground it up, and they put in 10-pound plastic containers on the shelves of Costco. So their focus was quantity over quality. It's the coffee that our grandparents love, and they drink it with a fork and knife. Second wave coffee was kind of headed up by Starbucks, like the 70s or 80s, and they brought this more personalized approach to coffee, where they're making drinks in front of you, they remember your name. It was more of an experience. But it was still, so it was a higher quality, but it was still quality kind of for the sake of quantity. And then more recently, coffee connoisseurs started realizing that we can approach coffee much like we approach wine. In fact, wine has about 80 natural tasting notes to it, whereas coffee is over 250. So there's this whole world within coffee that people started to realize is in there, and they started approaching it more like a craft and an art, and really started embracing a quality over quantity. So a lot of micro roasters, a lot of these small hipster cafes where people stare at you with a stone cold look, your delicious coffee. And so the idea of desiring a third wave coffee, or a third wave way of living, is pursuing a quality of life over quantity of life. Again, with our destination focus, it's very easy to want more degrees, more comfort, more career opportunities, whatever. But to kind of step back and just more enjoy the moment, pursuing a quality of life over a quantity of life. And then the third thing is the idea of embracing detours. So like I said, I had over 20 different jobs. I had a lot of random ones in there. But through experimentation, I realized that I did not like being a server at Chili's. It was awful. But through those jobs, I learned that I really enjoyed coffee, and I enjoyed that world. So one thing we say at Runabout, this is our core belief, because we believe coffee is made special by fierce commitment to each other, excellence, and experimentation. And I really like to apply this to much of my life as well, of pursuing like community, each other, pursuing excellence. But the big thing for me is yielding to experimentation. So with coffee, every time I get behind my espresso bar, I honestly try to make the best cup of coffee I can. It kind of can drive me crazy just trying to get that perfect extraction. And that's a lot of what third wave coffee is. But you have to, for the sake of joy and freedom in the craft, you have to yield to the fact that coffee is a natural product. It grows on trees, and it's like the pit of a cherry. And so ultimately it's going to do its own thing, and it's going to kind of respond in different ways to the atmosphere. And as a barista, you have to realize that, and you have to recognize that no matter how hard I try to make that perfect cup of coffee, there's always going to be that element of experimentation, or I'll never enjoy the process. I'll never enjoy it. And so that's a big thing, is experimentation. And I think about this recently, is that perfection is the ideal, but it is not the reality. So I think whatever like your craft is, whatever your art is, obviously perfection is the ideal. And even in life, you know, getting that degree, getting that career, finding that partner, doing whatever it is, it would be great if everything just lined up perfectly. But much like coffee, life is this natural product that we all know does its own thing. And the only way we can come to enjoy it and find freedom and peace in it is by just letting go of that idea of destination and that pursuit of perfection, and just realize that life is an experimentation, that it's all about trying new things and failing, and trying new things and failing, and maybe sometimes getting that perfect cup of coffee, but realizing that it might be very rare to get that cup of coffee. So these are some things that I kind of thought would be some good next steps, maybe, I don't know. It's a lot of like good ideas up here, and I like to bring them down. So the first one is just try new things, because life is an experimentation. Like be a server at Chili's, I don't know. You know, try things, figure out what you like, figure out what you don't like, and be open to trying new things. But I think the second one is even more important, because in our culture, at least I felt this, there's this pressure to not quit, you know, to have this grit and be like, I gotta stick it out. But I think there should be freedom in quitting new things as well, of saying this is not my thing, and that's okay. And looking for another thing and trying it out, and if that doesn't work, that's okay. I'm all for sticking with things, and I'm all for like, you know, pursuing things, but I'm also for giving people the freedom to say, yeah, you can quit, like find something else. The other thing is to read stories of unsuccessful people. This was huge for me when I got fired from the only job I managed to get fired in 20 jobs, which that's pretty impressive. But once I got fired, like more than the job itself, it hurt the idea of being rejected and the idea of being at square one. One of the most helpful things for me at the time is reading the stories of all these famous, successful people like Steve Jobs or Oprah or whoever, and they all have stories of failure, and they all have stories of they were not at this peak their whole life, and that they, were very unsuccessful in many ways. And then the final one is something I've been doing lately, because I don't have much time in life right now. My business is doing very well. I'm very happy with it, which it should be noted. I've had a lot of creative ideas in my life. This is the only profitable one I've ever had. So that's been doing well. My wife and I have two young kids, a 3-year-old and a 1.5-year-old. And so we're kind of in this crazy season. So it's very hard for me to find time to center myself. And I've kind of leaned on this idea of list journaling. I'm just every day trying to write just a list. Things I'm grateful for, things I don't like things that stress me out, whatever it is. Just a list, just to kind of get me centered and in the present and in the moment. So that's really all I had. Again, I think the big idea is that I'm still lost, even though my business is doing well, and you're lost, no matter where you are in your career or how old you are. That is okay, and it is very much expected. So just embrace life as the great experimentation. So.